All right. So there's no people watching us right now, but we just went live. I have no idea how this. I'm going to try to tweet while I'm doing this too. Um, we'll see how this goes. Or I mean, put a thing on Twitter.
Yeah, I reposted it just to
I
get
think
to
it
folks.
goes if it's the same. So the women's podcast did this yesterday, and it shows up on the side. I just have never done anything like this before. Oh, there's a few people now. There should be ability to comment as well. I'm going to try to share the YouTube channel also on Twitter, and then we'll go from there. And we'll start by talking a little Oral Roberts. Sam, you were at the game yesterday, right?
No, he might have lagged.
Yeah, we might have lost Sam.
Choppy.
You were there, Tim. Now we got you back, Sam. Well, Tim, what'd you think of so going into that game yesterday, Tim? What kind of chance did you give Oral Roberts?
Honestly, it was a toss-up. We know what Oral Roberts is capable of. They just hadn't played to their ability really in the past couple months. And I felt like last night they finally did that. Terrible start where USD races out to a 7-0 lead, but then a well-timed timeout, and they got their footing back. And really a big thing going into this game was the rebounding. USD, very good rebounding team. Oral Roberts, the opposite, and Oral Roberts comes out +7 on the glass last night, and I think that was probably the biggest difference. Obviously, USD didn't shoot it very well, and Oral Roberts did a great job clamping down on Lahat, but the rebounding was, significant to their victory, I thought.
Yeah, and even on the offensive glass, like that's where Oral Roberts gets destroyed usually, and USD does some destroying, and it was the opposite.
Yeah, I thought both. Kareem had 10. You always know you're going to get effort out of Kareem when he plays, no matter what. Even if he's not scoring, he's going to impact the game. But I thought, both Josh Jones and Sir Isaac Heron were very aggressive, a lot more active, whether it was tip backs or getting rebounds of their own. That is something they've been waiting to see that they haven't consistently got. And so to have some post presence there, they've got some great perimeter players, but the post production just hasn't been there this year. And last night, those guys finally were a lot more aggressive and productive out there.
Right. Well, and I had put this on Twitter and curious to get your guys' thought. I thought the biggest thing, what did Lahat end up with? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I had the stats with me somewhere.
Yeah, I wasn't in the media room yesterday, so otherwise I would have it. But the point remains. I thought the biggest thing was Sir Isaac and Josh on the hot. Like, even when I thought it was just going to be pound that ball inside, and they didn't double on him, and he was, Boston Holt and Caleb Stewart both had decent games offensively, but Lahat was held in check.
Yeah, let me see. Pulling it up right now. They had him. Yeah, Lahat, he had 12 points on 5 of 11 shooting, but yeah, still not what he normally puts up on a night.
Right. And for the most part, there wasn't a ton of double on him. They saw him go on their own.
I think they kind of we're going to live with that and hope that so they don't have to double off for shooters. USD is streaky, but they have some guys capable of going off from deep. And I think because they did single in the post, they could guard the perimeter tight. And USD just never found an offensive rhythm. Even when they did claw back, it wasn't necessarily because the offense was clicking. They just
Right.
kind of clawed back in, and then that under 12 timeout, and then a barrage of threes by Oral Roberts really put it away.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, what was it, 42-42, and then ended
Yeah, that
77
turning point in the
62.
game for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
Iraq
under
played up to
12
that point, and
media.
then Oral Roberts looked like they had been there before, and
Yeah,
just kind of
35
exploded.
points in 12 minutes. That's some offense. Well, and going into that game on the group chat, and just I think the feeling in general was that this was, I mean, when that line came out as +3.5, for USD was +3.5, then it moved to like 5. Everyone thought they were cashing checks for USD, and sometimes those people in the desert know what they're doing. But I think the thing that everybody overlooked is that Oral Roberts has been there before, like you said, Sam. Like that just, I mean, not that that's an end all be all, but it got to the point where, I mean, Kareem were any other than DeShang, was anyone else on the Sweet 16 run?
Just I'm trying to think if maybe some of the like bench guys that don't get in, but of primary guys, just Kareem and DeShang.
Yeah, because Kareem was on the Sweet 16 team.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't remember. He was the one. I knew Isaac wasn't yet. But I mean, think about that. That's two guys that have went farther in this tournament than most they're going to be playing against.
I think that was.
And if you're, go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead, Sam.
It's like if you really have to pay attention, I think, to look at Bedford, and he put up monster numbers this year. So I was kind of waiting for him to kind of explode the way he did at the end of the game. I mean, he was top 10 in points per game in the Summit League. I feel like very quietly, and so it was kind of good to see him show up and show his scoring chops.
Well, and his back-to-back threes were the turning point.
Right.
Like that was.
Yeah,
it was still a close game at that point. Hey, Jacob.
Hey.
It was still close at that point, and then he hit the back-to-back threes, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, those corner threes were daggers. But yeah, I think what really showed up was Reem and DJ. I think that was their 8th win in Sioux Falls.
Right.
So I mean, kind of how we joke about the Dave Richmond. All he does is win in Sioux Falls. Those guys also know how to win in Sioux Falls. Despite what type of environment. And I think it just kind of going back to that under 12, I think it just clicked to them that like, hey, we've been here before. We know how to do this. We're a lot better than what we've played. And they just kind of snapped out of their funk and reminded people of what they can do.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, and let's put a bow on South Dakota, and then we'll talk Oral Roberts, South Dakota State, now that Jacob's here. And clearly Oral Roberts is going to beat South Dakota State. I mean, that experience is going to carry over. So we'll talk about them in a second. But USD building block this year, is it reasons to be concerned? They finished at the bottom of the league. I'll start and then let each of you guys go as you want to. I actually think this was kind of like Coach Peterson's first year. Last year he inherited the whole bunch. And I don't think I'm breaking any secrets that Todd Lee operates a little different than Eric Peterson. And so that change in culture, I don't think that team was ready for that. I guess that's the way I'll put it. So this was really his first year, yet I could see why Coyote fans would be a little nervous finishing last this year. Lahat's not back. Today's day and age, and Coach Peterson mentioned in the press conference, like he thought he was getting guys that weren't going to be transferring anymore because of the sit out after one time. That's just not a thing anymore. And it doesn't mean they're going to transfer. It just means things are rockier than I would say things are still heading upwards, but it's a tricky situation in South Dakota in Vermilion next year.
Yeah, I think despite the record, they're in a better place. I think one thing you have to look at is how did they compete? Obviously, they didn't win a lot of games, but when you have a record like that, the wheels can really fall off, and you can see guys quit. I never felt that way with this team. They always were trying to win every game, and those transfers that came in having previous relationships with Petey there, I think that pays dividends going into next year as far as maybe sticking around. I was at the press conference last year when he had Cruz Peril Hunt, and I'm trying to think who else was sitting out there, maybe Tassos, compared to last night. And it was a completely different vibe, for the good as far as talking about those guys. Lahat got a little emotional talking about his year and just what Petey meant to him, giving him that chance to succeed. And so I think there's a lot more positives. There's definitely some glaring holes that they need to fill. They need some more playmakers, and they obviously need to replace Lahat. But I think the trajectory is going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Do you think I think you have to find a core, but South Dakota certainly has hats wins they can hang their hat on. So if if they have a core group there they want to kind of build around, certainly I think they're on the right path.
Yeah.
Do you think those comments were made because he's hearing those players are being recruited already by other teams, or do you think it's just kind of laying out what kind of programs are going through now?
Hard to say, but I kind of felt like it was just pointing out the reality of how to build for next year. But I forget exactly what Caleb Stewart said, but I definitely didn't get any, reason to believe that there's any sort of, they're looking elsewhere. I'm sure people will talk to Caleb because of the numbers he put up, but, Boston specifically came here because of PD and their relationship from Utah. So I don't know. It was an interesting comment, something I didn't think about, that was his portal philosophy, was recruit guys that can't transfer again unless they sit out. And then now it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. You wonder if you'll see, I keep waiting for more players like Lahat to go down a level, a guy that at UCF and you almost wonder even at UCF how he didn't get more run. Like, he's so talented in the post and big and athletic. But to be able to go somewhere where you can be a focal point for a year or two versus playing 9-10 minutes a game.
And I think that would be a big recruiting pitch to guys like Caleb and Boston to say, hey, who knows what, your next team will be like, but I know what your experience will be like next year here. You're going to be the guys we center around. And then also that being a recruiting pitch for guys that might look to drop down, of saying, hey, you only got 10 minutes a game. You can come here and play 20, 25 and be a factor.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to South Dakota State, Oral Roberts. That's the game at 6 tonight. And then we'll move on to the later game tonight, and then Sunday after that. I was trying to think of the day of the week it is right now. I get into Sioux Falls vacation mode, and the days don't really matter. So 7.5-point favorites, South Dakota State. I definitely wanted to wait till Jacob was here before we talk South Dakota State. I think the easy answer is to say, South Dakota State's been playing so well. Oral Roberts has been playing so poorly. But I do think Oral Roberts showed a little bit that what they can be, at least. Any chance for Oral Roberts in this game?
I mean, they already beat SDSU this year, so there's a chance. I never worry about when we play Oral Roberts, like the McBride or the A. Smiths beating us. Like when A. Smiths is here, it's never those guys. It's always the third or the fourth score that always kills the Jacks. It's like Weaver down at Oral Roberts had 32. Kareem Thompson's always played us well. Juergens used to kill us. So it's always the third or fourth guy that seems to kill SDSU. So I'm interested to see. I assume, McBride will get his 15 to 20. Like, that's going to happen. But can SDSU guard the perimeter on the bigs? It seems like they've struggled with shooting bigs the last kind of 3-4 weeks. And then I guess, can they limit those extra players from scoring on them? Because, like I said, it seems like that's always what kind of kills us. And it's Sioux Falls, and SDSU always has a fun game here in Sioux Falls. That's a little bit closer than it should be.
Sam?
Yeah, I think Jacob alluded to it. Oral Roberts already has a win. they played really well up in Brookings, despite, Jacks pulling that one out. And, there's history of success here in Sioux Falls. They got that big, semifinal win that catapulted them to, go on that Sweet 16 run a couple of years ago. Obviously different teams, but, I think it's definitely going to be a good game. If that team that we saw last night shows up. Now, if it's the team that was playing these past 6-7 games, then it could be a long night. With Oral Roberts, it's just, how focused are they? Can they get some production out of their posts? And like Jacob alluded to, can SDSU make sure that they don't get beat by their third, fourth scorer? But, SDSU has played really well lately. I know the talk is Kansas City's winning streak, but SDSU is 7 of their last 8. I mean, they're clicking on both sides. As long as that ball doesn't get sticky with the offense and it's actually moving around and going inside and out and forcing Oral Roberts to make difficult decisions, whether double down on the post or play tight on the perimeter, make them have to work, and then makes your defense a lot easier because it eliminates transition offense for the other team, and you can get back. And, I'm a big believer. A lot of people say everything starts on the defense. I think with SDSU, it's the opposite. It all starts on the offense. If they play efficient and they move that ball around and everybody's contributing, their defense is night and day different because, again, they're eliminating transition and they're playing, really well in the half court. So I think it'll be a good game, but, if I'm not a betting man, but I would say probably SDSU pulls away at the end, but I think it'll be a good one.
The team that shows up the last 12 minutes of last night's game for Oral Roberts shows up, I think anyone's going to have a little bit of trouble. But, if it takes a team, kind of 30 minutes to warm up, that's always kind of tough. Whereas I feel like SDSU, they got the fresh legs. It's hard pick against them at this point.
Yeah. I think William Kyle and Luke Apple present a unique challenge to Oral Roberts. And I don't think we see the same. I mean, Oral Roberts finds a way to rebound again and play defense. I guess it's certainly possible. And I think, I have to keep reminding myself and then everybody else, like this season, we have to quit pretending like we just know what's going to happen, because it doesn't go that way. It just doesn't. So if we somehow found ourselves to North Dakota State at the end of this whole thing, I mean, is it shocking? I don't think so. But is it?
Well, that's what you picked, Todd. So you wouldn't be surprised.
What's that?
That's what you picked, Todd. So you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I would be. The poor Twitter won't hear the end of it. But, the one time I'm right, everyone's gonna know. But
I had to clarify that tweet was not me saying that.
The best part is we spent a whole podcast this week going on and on about. I mean, we get to the Denver Oral Roberts game, and we almost were like, let's just spend like 30 seconds on that because it's South Dakota. Or did I say it? South Dakota Oral Roberts? I don't remember. I think I said the wrong team. But we were basically like 3 minutes of, South Dakota's moving on, and then they get beat by 15. So we haven't even learned.
When you think you know nothing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there are teams that I don't think can make the run, but there isn't a team that I don't think can find a way to win a game. I just don't think that's true. It just isn't that type of year, which is weird coming off of 2 years when a show like this would be relatively boring because we knew what was going to happen, and it was what happened both those years. Second game today, you got Kansas City and Denver. Kansas City picked 8 and 9 in the preseason poll. Kansas City worked their way up on that winning streak up to second. Denver did what Denver's done the last couple of years. Started out really nice, and everybody started thinking, I wonder about Denver. And then the wheels came off. What do you guys think about the 8:30 game? Denver. Well, I'll ask the same question. We're all picking South Dakota State for the first game, right? Before I move completely on.
Yeah,
I am too. Yeah. Okay. Denver, Kansas City. Before I move on to our official pick, what do you guys? What's each team's path maybe to victory here?
I think it all depends on the health of a certain player out of the Denver camp.
Yep.
We don't really know. There's been rumblings, but we don't really know what the status is of Tommy Bruner. I think the thing that was interesting last weekend is they still had a lot to play for. If Oral Roberts had beat Kansas City last weekend, Denver would have been playing last night. So they could have been the 6th seed, dropped down to the 8th seed when he got, left that game. So if it was just an ankle stinger, I would have thought they would have brought him back because, as we know, Tommy can go nuclear and change a game at the drop of a hat. So it all starts there. If he's not playing, I don't give Denver a chance, honestly. They play very poor defense. They only win games if the offense is running on full cylinder, and Tommy's leading the way and everybody else is chipping in. But if he's not there to drive that vehicle, I don't give them a chance. But if he is, then it's a toss up.
Yeah.
I think either way, I mean, the last teams that have won this tournament have all won their last, 5 conference games in a row. And, that's what Kansas City's done. So, hard to play against the hot team, especially going into Sioux Falls. They clearly have the momentum, and momentum usually carries you through this tournament. So I agree with Tim. I don't know what Denver can put up. I mean, their defenses, they let up an enormous number of points, but, the numbers would say that, scoring wins this tournament, kind of like Tim was talking about, offense first. But, Kansas City, they were playing really good basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can Tommy score 50 tonight and get 30 from his other teammates if he plays? That's probably how they would win. And you just have to have Kansas City have a poor shooting night, just not kind of show up offensively, which can happen. We've seen teams have that where they show up and their offense just doesn't travel to Sioux Falls. But yeah, if Tommy doesn't play, there's probably less than a 10% chance that they win the game today. But if Tommy plays, you probably need a nuclear game from him. And probably need a supporting cast to do what they did against SDSU when they played down there in Denver, where you have 5 or 6 guys in double figures, and you just kind of hope Kansas City's offense doesn't show up today.
Yeah, the one thing. Well, I'm with you guys. If Tommy doesn't play, I did just 3 minutes ago say there's no way I would say any team doesn't have a chance. I don't see a path without Tommy Bruner playing.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how that happens. The Kansas City's offense can get real stagnant. The positive for them is their defense can really. They're a horrible matchup for Tommy Bruner. Everybody's 6'4" or 6'5" on the perimeter and ultra athletic. That doesn't mean I think it got a little lost in their collapse just how special Tommy Bruner's offensive season was. And it's not just leading the league in scoring. Leading the nation in scoring. Like, it was efficient. It was not, I'm going to get up 30 shots and lead the nation in scoring. It was efficient and special to watch. So any team that has a guy like that out there can win a game. There's no way that it's a no chance. The other problem for Denver, I don't know how you don't play Isaiah Carr 25 minutes today, at least. Like, Alan Mukeba against Toko Dynamo is unfair. Like, it's just, they're so soft inside. And so if it's Pedro Lopez, San Vicente, and Toko Dynamo trying to stop Iban Coley and Alan Mukeba, it'll be a whole different way that I think we'll be going. A lot of casual Summit League fans, if that's the case, will be going, who's this Mukeba guy that just scored 25 points? And it's such a horrible mismatch. And I know Carr gets in some foul trouble, but then it's just this puzzling times where he plays 14 minutes and has 2 fouls. And I get that he's not ultra, but they got plenty of offense. I don't know why you need him out there to try to get you extra offense.
Yeah, I would agree. Honestly, when they were at St. Thomas, it kind of got a little awkward there. Walbrun benched Dynamo and threw out some different lineups to see who would give them energy. And honestly, if I was him, obviously I'm not a coach. There's a reason I'm not in the business. But if I was him, I would roll out, Carr as my 5-man and either put Pedro or, play really small, some of those other guys at the 4 and roll with that starting lineup. And at least you have someone on the back end that can that will defend, rim protect, and give you energy, because Tynamo, he can check out of games, and it kills them really bad when he does.
Yeah, and we know they're going to get to the rim, like everybody does. So I just don't. I mean, he averaged almost 2 blocks at, I think it was less than 15 minutes a game. That's some incredible
Insane.
shot blocking numbers, and he's not useless offensively. He's not, but he can. Bruner can throw him a lob or two, and he can score, and he makes a couple moves in the post. I'm surprised he just doesn't get a lot of run very often.
Yeah, I would definitely go that route.
It'll be interesting to see who the crowd picks, because I assume that it'll be a lot of Jackrabbit holdovers at the game. So if I was a coach, I'd say try to endear yourself to the crowd as much as you can to try to get on their side.
Yeah.
The problem is, problem after that last SDSU Denver game, I don't know if there's a lot of SDSU fans that want to cheer for Tommy and
Good point.
Denver
Advantage
after
KC.
some of the Tommy stuff there. So yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. It's like Denver keeps it close, maybe they get the crowd, but I don't know. I don't think a whole lot of people are going to love Tommy. It's going to kind of be the Paul Mills effect this year, where no one really says anything, and then he gets announced, and you might get a little bit of a boo from the crowd, just from the game in Brookings and some of the antics. But yeah, I don't know. That'll be interesting to see how the crowd kind of reacts. I assume they'll go for Denver at some point, but never really know.
Well, Zeke got Player of the Year now. They don't have to be
Yeah.
in it. Totally.
That's true.
Right.
We got the award.
Yeah. All right, North Dakota State, St. Thomas. 4-5 matchup. It's maybe the biggest toss up because of that, but also the biggest. I mean, it's just a good, fun matchup that certainly different than these last two that we talked about. Is that the 6:00 game on Sunday? Do you guys know?
Yeah, it's 6:00 tomorrow.
Okay.
Glad we got Sam to confirm, because I had no idea
Yes.
which
I
game
didn't
went
either.
first.
I just show up at 5:15 and go wander in, and 2 teams are there. So who do you guys got in the St. Thomas, North Dakota State? What a tricky matchup, because you never know.
I'll go first. I'm wearing the purple. I'm picking St. Thomas. We've kind of seen the game plan from JT. I mean, this is not, even the, 5th time playing this team, over the course of the last couple of years, and it's the same cast of characters. I mean, we're going to need a big Parker Bjorklund game. I mean, he's been the lead scorer in, 5 out of the last 6 games against them. And I think, I maybe Anders Nelson was like the other person in there, but for some reason, and I don't know if it's because he has, family ties that played for NDSU, but this is a game where Parker Bjorklund really comes alive. And we saw it last year. He put up, good chunk of points in this tournament as well. They have a lot of guys that have been in this tournament too. And it feels like they, over the last course couple of games, I mean, they were blowing teams out. So, similar to Kansas City, where you gotta pick the hot team. I'm picking St. Thomas here because of that.
I think it's definitely going to be the best game of the quarterfinals, and not just saying that because it's 4-5. Duh, usually that is. But I just think, there's also kind of, and Sam alluded to it, there is a rivalry here brewing. Obviously, there's an angle with Parker and his cousin having played there, and Andrew Morgan, Ryan Dufault were high school teammates. Dave and Johnny recruit the same kids. They had a recruiting battle this fall that went NDSU's way. So there is some history, and this is turning into a fun rivalry. Momentum. I'm like Sam. I'm a big believer in momentum, and St. Thomas has just played a lot more connected. I think that's going to help them playing more together. And this is the last hurrah for Parker and Brooks and Raheem. They're done.
Yeah.
They're done. There's no COVID year for them to come back to. And so, people say they're playing with house money. I think they're coming in here. This is our national championship tournament. And NDSU right now, for whatever reason, snapped back into their bad habits last weekend. But then at the same time, it's Dave Richmond and Sioux Falls.
The X Factor, something about it.
Does anybody know off the top of their well, first, there was a question in the comments about a Bruner update. We don't really have one. He didn't play the remainder of their game, that he got injured. But I think if he can play at all, he'll play. I mean, they're down to it's his last college game. I mean, we could put it that way. If they don't win today, whatever they lose next, Tommy Bruner doesn't play college basketball anymore. So if he can get out there and make plays, I think he will. But nothing official, one or the other. They're doing a good job of keeping that quiet. The back to the St. Thomas North Dakota State game. I picked North Dakota State. To Tim's point, Dave Richmond in this tournament. And even to Oral Roberts, like Oral Roberts looked like a mess before yesterday, and then comes out and looked like Adam Hildebrandt, the play-by-play guy. When I saw him, he said, "Where's this team been all year?" Well, some teams just find a way in these situations at this time of year, and I won't go against Dave Richmond, which is to my question. Anybody know this answer? The last time a North Dakota State team lost in the first round of the Summit League tournament?
No idea.
I don't either.
I don't know that. I do know the last time they didn't make the finals, which was the 18 years, something like that.
Okay, so this is even better.
They were in the 4-5 game was the last time they didn't make the finals. And so that kind of, stirs the pot a little bit.
6 years ago, they didn't make the final game. So maybe that's a better answer than when's the last time they lost in the first round.
And but all those years, they've either been the 1, 2, or 3, I think.
Sure.
And so now they're the 4 or 5 game. This is the seeds they don't like to be in.
Weren't they the 4 seed when they went to the play-in game against Duke? After they won the play-in game?
I don't know. I don't think so because they won. Obviously, they won it that year. And I just read that the last time they didn't make the finals, they were in the 4-5 game.
Well, I picked North Dakota State. I'll let Tim and Jacob answer. Maybe I'll even dig here on I do have a supercomputer in front of my face. I suppose I can try to find that.
I feel like I'm conflicted as an SDSU fan who I want to win this game because personally, you probably want St. Thomas to win because then tomorrow, or if you win today, St. Thomas wins Sunday. You're automatically playing for the NCAA tournament no matter what on Tuesday. So you probably want St. Thomas to win, but I truly think NDSU is a better matchup for SDSU. Blowout game aside, St. Thomas just has guys that defend us well. The game in St. Thomas went, down to the wire. The game in Brookings, it took a 8-0, 10-0 run in like a minute for SDSU to kind of grab that game. So you kind of feel like NDSU is a little bit of a better matchup for SDSU. Again, depends on which Bison team shows up, and you're going to bet against Dave and Sioux Falls. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted. I personally probably would rather see NDSU if you're looking at it from who you'd rather play, but you'd probably rather have St. Thomas playing Monday just so you're guaranteed a shot at making it to the NCAA tournament on Tuesday. So I don't know. Is that really an answer? I'm kind of conflicted on who I think's going to win.
I think that's worth noting is that South Dakota State fans have basically 2 bites at the apple to make it to March Madness. And so, I mean, why wouldn't you if you're a South Dakota State fan out there cheer for St. Thomas? It's like if they win it all, you still get to go anyway.
If SCSU wins tonight, obviously they're still going to be around Sunday for games. They will be pro St. Thomas Sunday night. It's going to feel like a home game for them. And but yeah, I think the interesting thing here is going to be, who outwits who between the 2 coaches, because Johnny is a lot more willing to adapt as the game goes, adjust his, lineups, go with the hot hand, rely on his bench, which is a huge strength of theirs, and kind of adjust their game plan on the fly. Where Dave, it's well known, he is a pound a square peg into a round hole type of guy. He's going to ride his game plan from start to finish. But if it's a good game plan, then they usually blow people out of the water. But if all of a sudden things aren't going well and he doesn't adjust, it's a good night for the other team.
To Tim's point, like St. Thomas, I think probably has one of the deeper benches in the Summit League, but it doesn't really matter when you're playing the first game. So if they were to, grateful enough to be able to move on, I think that could be an extra to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
So who is our consensus move on? Now that we have 4 of us, that we should have had a 5th person just to.
I think it goes to show about how good this game could be in the 4 or 5s
Yeah.
that were split on this one.
We'll talk both of them since there's probably plenty of South Dakota State folks on. We'll talk both of them next round. So let's just go to that. South Dakota State, if it were to be St.
Oh, we
Thomas,
still got to do UND Omaha.
we don't want to do that game. We don't like them. No,
Zach Josh would be
Omaha.
so mad at you if we skipped that game.
Yeah.
He
I was
would
just
quit
wanting
the
to get more
podcast.
comments. UND Omaha. What's the path for Omaha?
I think it's kind of, in a different way, a little bit similar to Denver's situation. If they get Tony Osborne back, that helps change a lot of things. Not that he's, an impact player in terms of, put the ball in his hands and make things, but he spaces the floor for them. He gives room for Frankie to operate with his 3-point shooting, and it changes their offense when he's out there. He's a pretty good defender too, for being a small guy. But if he's not out there, they kind of become one-dimensional because they're not really a good 3-point shooting team outside of him. So depending on how that hand's doing, it is his offhand, I believe. So I would have to imagine they let him go, put a brace on there, and hopefully he can do something.
Yeah. Just to go back to our previous point, North Dakota State, when they went into the play-in game and then played Duke, was a 3 seed in the Summit League tournament, 9-7 that year in Summit League play. Anyways, sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's probably the path for me too. Tony Osborne, for a guy who isn't, a 15-point per game guy, I think he makes a much bigger difference than it seems, just based on the numbers. For that reason, he's a decent defend. Really, actually, Omaha defends pretty well as a team. They just can't score unless Frankie's going off. Sam, what's Omaha's path, or what do you and Tim, do you pick North Dakota?
It's interesting because if you were to ask
yeah.
this question in January, I think it'd be Omaha decisively. I mean, it feels like they kind of had their run a little bit earlier in the year. I mean, they whooped UND earlier in the season. I think you got to go with North Dakota. I mean, Fiddler, he played, pretty well. But that's kind of their path. I mean, it's similar to, a team like, Denver, where, as I've kind of found, kind of going through this, I mean, your star player needs to have, their best games, pretty much in a row. So, Fiddler's time to shine. We'll see. We'll see if it's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I guess I didn't really give you an answer, but I would still go UND because they can win games ugly. Omaha, things have to go well for them to win, where UND can win in a muck it up kind of game.
Yeah.
As long as they don't, think that they're the Splash Bros and start, have a night where they're 8 for 34 from deep, which they are susceptible of falling into. As long as they avoid that, I think UND probably wins this one pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see Omaha keeping it close for majority of the game if Fiddler can kind of be Fiddler and score 25, 30 points, kind of keep them in it. But I know we've seen UND struggle with some of the big games down the stretch here with losses to when they lost to NDSU, kind of gave the game away against SDSU. I guess I don't know if it gave it away, but it's kind of fell apart in the second half. So I guess it's time to see if UND can take that next step and be better than just a good story, or can they actually win a game or two here in the tournament under Sather? I think UND wins, but I think the way they've struggled in some of the big moments towards the end of the year, could leave the door open for Omaha to win the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I picked UND as well. I think BJ Omont, if you put him directly on Fiddler, he's one guy you don't have to help with Fiddler as much as others. Underrated defender. I think that makes a huge difference. Tim brought up the point. The one thing with UND is they're not a good shooting team, and they sometimes decide they are. It was almost maddening to watch them against South Dakota State, where at least 2 guys on the court had a 3 or 4 inch advantage on the guy guarding them, and they're shooting jump shots. Like, find the mismatch and go with it, And those guys are good defenders. Mims, Easily great defenders. I'm not trying to, but still, you have 4 inches on the guy. That matters. And they just so like that's where they fall away sometimes. So we picked the 1, 2, and 3 all to make it, and I think that's reasonable. But out of those 3, who's the most likely to not win? Because not all 3 of them aren't going to win. I just don't think it's going to happen. Even though we picked it, all 3 of those teams aren't going to be in the semifinals. For each of you, who's the most likely of those 3 to not make it?
I would say UND. I just think, they have, had problems with Omaha in the past, and, Frankie can have a good night. Markel Sutton and JJ White, both very underrated players. They've had some good seasons. And if Nick Davis can hold his own against Amar in terms of rebounding and, not letting them score in time inside, they could pull out an upset. I just think, both SDSU and Casey are playing so well right now, and they're playing, they have an identity, and they're playing to their identity and not playing to something they're not. And I think that it will carry over tonight.
Nice. Yeah.
So UND as well.
I'm glad you brought up Sutton and Davis and JJ White, guys that just deserve their names mentioned as solid players in this league that make a big difference. Sam, how about you?
I think it's UND as well. If they got Osborne, same team that, North Dakota had to go into Omaha, and again, they got crushed because Frankie Fiddler had 29 points. So I think we're closer here in Sioux Falls to Omaha than Grand Forks. So just we'll see how many Omaha fans show up, but that's the one team I'd be worried about if I were them.
I don't think even Michael's making it, so I don't know how many Omaha fans will be.
We'll see.
Maybe the Red Army guy will. Who knows?
Yeah, true. I mean, it's not. I mean, we almost went to the Omaha Zoo today, which meant I would have had to be back. It's not that far. It really isn't.
I lived in Omaha for a year. It's about 2.5 hours. It's an easy drive.
Yeah.
It's you just hop on the interstate and head north. So
Set the
easy
cruise
drive.
control at 90.
I mean, you go through Nebraska.
You can
They say
here.
it's like 60. They say it's 65, but you can haul 75 through Omaha or through Nebraska. So it's an easy drive. They used to get a lot of fans up here, but that was kind of back when they made it to the finals against TJ and Dom and lost there. But I haven't really seen an Omaha crowd really show up since then. But I guess we'll see if a Sunday crowd can show up for them.
Jacob, who's most likely of those 3?
I agree with that UND could lose, but so I don't eat crow tonight. I could see a path where SDSU struggles coming out of the gate. Oral Roberts, they played a game. They got the rust knocked off. They come out hot. I could see a path for Oral Roberts, but I just don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, there's no chance they lose or they don't, they can't win tonight or whatever. But I could see Oral Roberts, coming out hot, they've already played a game. They got that rust knocked off of them. So I could see either of those, but UND would probably be my most likely team to lose of the top 3.
So here's the interesting thing that none of us are going to pick Kansas City. I actually think that's matchup dependent. I think they're a horrible matchup for Denver, horrible matchup, and a horrible matchup for Tommy Bruner. Now, of course, he'll score 45. But I've been wrong so many times. This isn't going to shock anybody. But I actually think the most likely, I think all 3 of them are going to win. Most likely is South Dakota State. Oral Roberts I would not want to be playing Oral Roberts right now. Not that they're good necessarily but if they truly can fix a couple things, and you've got Kareem and Deshane Weaver can have one of those weird games where he can't miss, where I'm going, what is he shooting? Good shot, 5 times, and so
I can confirm their coaching staff says that too.
Yeah. He's not set. He's falling sideways. Why is he shooting? Bam. Okay, never mind. That was a good shot. And sometimes those just go. Again, I don't think any of the 3 are going to lose, but the most likely I think could be South Dakota State.
It's a matchup issue. Oral Roberts just has guys that can match up perfectly with SDSU, and like I said, it's always like a third or fourth guy for them that goes off, and we saw Weaver do it already this year. So would it really be a surprise if he did it again? Probably not. But I'm hoping that SDSU shows up awake to start the game and kind of just cruise us to a win, because that would be good for all the SDSU fans here, because it's been a lot of cardiac jacks moments the last few years.
Yeah. I mean, I like that last 12 minutes of Oral Roberts. That looked really pretty nice. Again, they're just as likely to come out and look disinterested today, but Kareem Thompson and Isaac McBride won't be. And so, it starts at the top. All right, second round. We'll go South Dakota State versus St. Thomas. Who you guys got and why?
Ooh, this is like watching. This is like picking between brothers for me. This one's hard. So I'll defer to the other guys.
I just looked at who's watching it, and the entire St. Thomas starting lineup is on. So.
Oh, interesting. Oh, high price. Well, I'm going to pick St. Thomas. They're the best team in the league. It took South Dakota State to have a miracle to beat them in St. Paul. When the lights are brightest and all the attention's out, they always pull through. So I'm going to pick St. Thomas. I think I picked them in the bracket challenge by 6. So I'm going to go with that.
Nice.
And I'll go. No shocker here. I'll go SDSU. I think they've figured something out in that little 10-0 run they had in Brookings, and hopefully they can just kind of carry that momentum over. And kind of what catapulted the end of the season run was that 10-0 run that the seniors started in Brookings. I just think Mims and Charlie, they're going to be defending at an extra level this weekend. The refs generally let you play a little bit more. I think that kind of probably helps both teams in this case, where you're not have to worry about fouls. But I think SDSU, if they play through the bigs, let those guys kind of cook down low. And then as long as Zeke isn't, 2 of 18 and has like 6 missed 3-pointers in the first half, I think, SDSU's offense has been pretty efficient here this last month. So I'm fairly confident in what SDSU can do. And I think they could win the game by, same kind of thing, 6 to 8 points there. Just not a big win, but a comfortable one.
So beat a team 3 times, Jacob, is what I will tell you. So
yeah, it is. Oh, no, for sure.
My favorite. Yeah.
I think either way, it's going to be a really good game, and I would have to agree with Jacob. If they can really work through the bigs down low and go inside out, and if Zeke doesn't try too hard, I think that's where he gets in trouble. To Jacob's point, is when he tries too hard, when he tries to make the fancy pass, or got to make a play instead of just trusting everybody around him and just letting things naturally happen. When they do that, I don't think there's a team in the league that can stop them. But the thing that St. Thomas does so well, probably better than anybody, is they turn you over and then they make you pay for when you turn it over. They push in transition, and they've got to be towards the top in points off turnovers in the league. And so, if it's one of those nights where they try too hard, SDSU, in that matchup, it would go St. Thomas's way. But if they just, play calm and together, work through the post inside out, make those tough decisions on the defense, I think it's an SDSU win.
So that was an SDSU pick, right, Tim?
Sure. I'm not going to be allowed in either. I'm not going to be allowed in either gym after this.
The impressive amount of words without making a pick was something.
It's been a lot of drama behind the scenes, I'll tell you that.
It is funny to hear how much drama that causes, like it's a personal thing. You could even want both teams to win, which is impossible. But
I hate watching them play each other. It's like knots turning in my stomach watching them play each other.
And see, I have it so much easier than all of you guys. So much easier. But,
I think it's one thing to cover a team, but when you get, when the personal connections get involved, that changes the dynamic, and having both having that on both sides, it makes it difficult. But I still wouldn't change it because I love it at the same time, even though I gotta see one team be sad at the end of the day, and maybe mad that I didn't cheer for them as hard as I should.
Well, don't turn into a hermit like me, Tim, that doesn't talk to anyone, so you can avoid feelings. I'm not sure that's the answer either. On that game with those two teams, I would pick South Dakota State. I think South Dakota State's a bad matchup for St. Thomas. And if you saw me on the rocks at the Falls today, you would think this is stupid that I'm making this comment. But one of the problems with St. Thomas is the athleticism. And again, if you saw me on the rocks, I shouldn't be talking about anybody's athleticism. But the Jack's guards are such good defenders, especially Mims and Easley, and that's a real problem for St. Thomas. And then you add in William Kyle and Luke Apple, and it's like mismatch problems galore for some really talented bigs in St. Thomas. It's just a size, speed, athleticism problem. Now, granted, that game St. Thomas should have won in St. Paul. So we can't forget what the season is, but I would go with the Jacks in that one.
Yeah. I think a big X factor in that game could be Carter Bierke in that game, because one thing that those TSU bigs struggle with is they can't guard on the perimeter. And if Bierke plays really well, and really Parker too, when he can hit a few outside. Hey, he hasn't shot as well as last year, but if Bjarke's having one of those big nights off the bench, especially when they're doing a lot of that ball screen or ball handoff action in a little pick and pop scenario, that will be trouble for SDSU because their bigs do not guard that. They just can't do it, and Bjarke makes people pay for that.
Really good.
I like seeing him check in because I know he's going to shoot it in like 25 seconds. So,
and especially when he's at the top of the key, that straight on three is damn automatic.
Good point, Tim. Because that's my UND argument when it comes to South Dakota State is the ability of Sotne and even Amara a little bit to step out and hit from the outside. All right. Real quick on if it were the Bison, I actually think for whatever weird reason, because it's those two teams, and that is my analysis, which is not analysis at all, just because it's those two teams somehow, North Dakota State, if they get through the first one, all of a sudden things start going the right way for them. And I think that's the shocker of the tournament if those two teams play.
Not a homer pick, but to steal – I feel like I keep stealing Jacob's takes here, so I got to make sure I give him credit. But I feel like the St. Thomas game is a harder matchup for SDSU. I like their odds better against NDSU. I feel like they kind of broke them a little bit up there in Fargo, and they're just playing better as a team as a whole. Andrew Morgan's really good, but I feel like SDSU's posts as a unit are a lot better. And I feel like the guards are a lot better at SDSU and a lot more connected as well. So I would take SDSU in that matchup.
Well, even to another argument against North Dakota State, like who's the on-court leader this year for the Bison?
Honestly, I think it's Jakari White. Anybody. I don't think they really have one, but if I had to pick, I would say him.
Well, and when you talk like North Dakota State runs in the tournament, it's that veteran. I mean, how many times did they look outmatched when you look at it on paper or just at different times? And then they get to this tournament and the leadership steps up and it's just so that's the argument for it not being Dave Richmond in March.
Yeah. They don't have a Sam Griesel, Vinny Shahid, Lawrence Alexander, or going way back, and Ben Woodside. They don't have a guy like that right now.
Grant Nelson.
I don't want to cause any drama there.
I was trying to bait you there too.
Who knows if his family's paying attention to the Summit League this week.
If it was that matchup, I think I feel comfortable with SDSU. I think it's closer than it was in Fargo. I think NDSU is NDSU in Sioux Falls. They make it tough, but them playing back-to-back nights, I think, is an advantage for SDSU having the day off. Up in Brookings, I just don't think the team was locked in when they lost to NDSU, which is a weird thing to say for a rivalry game, but they still something hadn't clicked for the team yet at that point in the season when they lost that game. And then since they came back and beat Omaha, they've been playing on a different level. I just think they find a way to beat NDSU. I love the Morgan Kyle matchup down low. If the refs, let them play through it because they both have advantages over the other guy. So it's fun to see those two kind of to pound it down low. I think it comes down to, can Apple have a big game, or can Charlie or Mims kind of step up scoring wise, because they're going to throw everything at Zeke and William. So it's kind of who's that second scorer for second or third scorer for SDSU. And I think as long as Luke keeps playing well like he has been, Charlie's been pretty efficient offensively. Matt's had some pretty good games here and there. I feel confident in SDSU, but it is NDSU in Sioux Falls, so you never truly know with them.
Right.
That's kind of my thought. It's like we've seen this game before about a year ago, and the NDSU Bison won. So, different cast characters this year, but the same head coach. So I'm picking the Bison in that matchup.
Nice. Hey, we got a split on that one. That was fun.
Well, he might be, he's got some family ties to that.
Compromise.
You guys have no rooting interest.
Yep, I'm biased on my end.
You guys don't wear any blue ever whatsoever.
Not wearing any blue right now at the moment.
Yeah. Neither of you run a podcast on South Dakota State.
Who would do that?
Neither of you work there. All right. So North Dakota, where we don't really have rooting interest, none of us. North Dakota and Kansas City. Who you guys got?
I think that'll be it'll be an ugly game, but it'll be a fun ugly game. It'll be a hideous rock fight. But I think on paper UND is a better team, but I don't know, this KC team just seems to figure it out. You pointed out, Todd, about how Menzies played a ton of different lineups throughout half of the season and then finally decided on something. And I think he'd realize, hey, we're going to lose a lot of games by doing this, but we'll find something at some point that'll click. And ever since they settled on this lineup that they have out there, and with Corsalt and McCabe coming off the bench being big boosts for them, there's just something about them, and they now have a go-to guy with Jamar Brown that I think when it gets ugly and it gets down to the wire, I trust him more than his decision-making more than probably Omat's, even though Omat has a higher ceiling. I do trust Brown's decision-making more to kind of pull that one off in the end.
Yeah.
I appreciate the ruse. I want to give a shout out to my guy that also appreciates the ruse. Again, they'll be coming off a win if they get to that point too, the Kansas City Ruse. And, North Dakota will be playing, probably the next day. And we've all picked them to have a tough game as well. So, in that scenario, I'd pick Kansas City over North Dakota.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree there. I think coming off a game, where, unless UND can get ahead of Omaha and sit their guys for a majority of the second half of the Omaha game, I just think there is that advantage of having a day off and recovering. So I guess we'll see. But I like Kansas City. I think they come in fresh. They when they can have a day off and then come back out there and kind of punch in the face again with their defense. Probably just as good as, if not better than anybody in the Summit League. They're probably going to have that advantage. I do like UND. I think they have some chances to do something, but I think Kansas City is just too good defensively for UND, and this is the game that I think got Kansas City kind of rolling down the second half of the season when they beat UND. So I guess they kind of have the recipe already. So I'd probably lean Kansas City as well.
Well, I picked North Dakota, and you guys have me almost convinced out of it. But I'm going to stick with what I went with. I do think North Dakota, I don't know that they're the second most talented team in the league, but the parts fit right. I love the way they're constructed. Tyree Ihenacho is, if I were to get a jersey for a guy, as a person way too old to get a jersey for a guy, that it would be a Tyree Ihenacho jersey. Like, I just love the way he plays. I love the way he sets that whole thing up. As long as the threes are in the offense and set up by Tyree and not just jacking up covered threes, I think North Dakota finds a way in this one. They're underrated defensively. And Kansas City is, we forget how bad they can be offensively sometimes. And so this one will be a rock fight. We're talking like 58, 57. So it literally could go either way.
First to 55.
Yeah, it'll be little St. Thomas, Idaho State type of
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
yeah. But and of course, which means it will be 82-81 after we said this. But
Run and gun.
I love what Jamar Brown brings, and if I had to get a second person's jersey, it would be Alan Mukeba. I think there's a lot to like with the Roos, and yet I think North Dakota finds a way. I just wonder what happens to the Kansas City offense, and North Dakota's a darn good defensive team, and Amar controls that glass. The one problem with Alan Mukeba is there's clearly reasons he doesn't play as much as he can show you on the good moments, is he gets himself in foul trouble and gets himself in the wrong spot too many times and things like that. If it was just his athleticism, he could, he's an amazing talent. And Amar might be able to find some ways to 20 rebounds just by getting himself in the right spot. And when you look at him, he should never have 20 rebounds, but he finds a way anyways. And so can they control the glass? Can they find open shots? I think North Dakota finds a way, but as a consensus, we move Kansas City. And we split exactly. So let's talk both teams versus Kansas City. And I will say, if South Dakota State doesn't make it to the final, and I think the winner of that North Dakota-Kansas City game goes to the NCAA tournament. But regardless of which one it is, which would be a whole lot of fun. North Dakota's been to the tournament before, but never in the summit. And so last 12 years, it's been North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and Oral Roberts, all who are on the same side of the bracket. So, there's whoever is representing the other side would be going for their first Summit League representation. All right, let's start with South Dakota State versus Kansas City. Who you guys got?
This one's tough because KC started their, they found their lineup when they played that game down in KC and really mucked it up and, kind of held court that entire game against SDSU. So it's a tough one. As an SDSU fan, I'd rather play UND. They've had their number and the scoring differential in the two games that they've won is like 31 points or something like that. So I'd rather play UND. So if they get KC, it's definitely conflict of styles, and whoever establishes their style will win. So can SDSU make it a game in the 70s to 80s, or will KC make it a rock fight and force bad decisions out of SDSU? So, but I still go SDSU on a Tuesday night in Sioux Falls over anybody on that side of the bracket. So I'll go SDSU, but I don't think it'll be pretty.
I think South Dakota State as well, and I think it'll look like the championship game last year, where both teams be kind of coming into it hot, and then we'll kind of realize who the number one team of the Summit League was throughout the whole season, pretty much.
And obviously, I'm going to lean SDSU. I think, kind of like Tim said, it's a Tuesday night SDSU team. There's 3 or 4 guys on SDSU's roster that have been a part of a Summit League championship already. They've been there. They know what to expect. Tuesday night, the entire place will be sold out. It'll be all SDSU fans. Opposite of Tim, I think I'd rather face Kansas City. I think UND, if they get hot shooting, they're going to run away. They can run away from you. Kind of like Todd said earlier, you're not really afraid of Kansas City's offense running away from you. They can get really ugly. It can be an ugly time for them. They are strong defensively, so it'll make it tough. But UND has that runaway ability, whereas I don't see Kansas City having that. They did that up in Brookings where they came out and punched SDSU in the mouth for the first half, and then SDSU kind of controlled it in the second half. obviously couldn't do that down in Kansas City. Kansas City controlled most of the game, but I think if you have a sold out Denny, it's all blue on Tuesday. I'm fairly confident against about anybody on that bottom half of the bracket for South Dakota State. So I'd probably lean SDSU, whether they're playing UND or Kansas City, and I guess as kind of a part of that question, which team do you think of those two would be able to handle the environment better? Is it Kansas City because they can lean on the defense and that travels more? Or do you think UND would be able to handle the emotions of playing in front of that many people for really the first time for a lot of those guys? And if your offense doesn't show up, it can get ugly quick.
And I think the Achilles heel. I totally agree with you, Jacob, on that analysis. They have a better offense that can run away from you, where it's going to be close regardless against KC. But I think that environment could, a BJ Omot, some of those other guys that they get caught up in the moment and they stop moving the ball and they go, 8 for 34 again and just kill their chances. I think that environment could. Again, they're the more talented team than KC, but I think they're the more volatile in results than KC.
They have been together longer. So there's that a little bit.
Yeah.
My point on that is Kansas City almost forces you to play close to them, whereas, UND kind of lets you go at your kind of own pace. And my laptop's about to die, so I got to run. So
all right.
It's always good.
All right. Thanks,
Appreciate
it. The thing I'll say, I don't think Kansas City is going to get here. Putting that many together, it seems unlikely. So I'd go SDSU. I think there's a couple things that I think can be an Achilles heel for SDSU. Bigger guards, which Kansas City does have that a little bit, but their scoring ability gets so shaky sometimes. And then bigs that can step out, and Kansas City doesn't have that at all. Except that freshman Julian, who plays only a few minutes a game now, but they don't. And so I think SDSU wins that one. And to finish up, we also split on North Dakota State, which one of the North Dakota State people was Sam, and then he left. So I'm going to have to fight this battle on my own. But if it were North Dakota State and Kansas City, what do you guys got?
I'd probably, if NDSU's in that title game, it'd be hard to go against them, against a team that's never been in this situation whatsoever. And so I'd probably go NDSU in that just because of experience.
Yeah, I'd lean the same way. I think whoever comes out of the top half of the bracket wins it. Whether it's SDSU, NDSU, I even say if St. Thomas makes out of that top half, I think they'd win it. I think that side has the best matchups for teams. But I think if NDSU comes out of it, again, you're betting against Dave, you're betting against NDSU and Sioux Falls. Like you don't win any money doing that. So I'd lean NDSU and would be very interested to see what the environment's like for that game. See what kind of crowd shows up for it. But yeah, I think high level environment. It's just tough to bet against the Bison in that scenario.
Yeah,
it is kind of weird that that Oral Roberts KC game on Sunday was such a huge factor in how it was going to form this tournament here. Had Oral Roberts won, I think there'd be a lot of people in Brookings feeling real good, but since they lost, it made their bracket so much harder.
Yep.
They're gonna have more troubles getting out of their bracket than they will Tuesday night, whoever they play, if they get there.
And if it's not, I think it would be North Dakota State. But what I will say, it just because of experience and things like that, if South Dakota State doesn't make it to the final on their side, yes, the other side is inexperienced, and yes, I think the more talented side becomes the bottom side. The Kansas City and North Dakota, I truly believe, are the second and third best teams in the league, at least at this as the season is shook out. But I still would lean North Dakota State in this matchup just because of experience and all of that. Um, I'll ask one more question and then we'll wrap up. And we got a nice turnout. Thank you everybody for. Hopefully this was fun to listen to. My last question is, fandom aside, what matchup would you most want to see in the finals?
From an entertaining aspect, I would love to see, just from getting some good ratings and a good game, the way I like to watch is a healthy Omaha team take that side of the bracket and SDSU play them, because it won't be a rock fight between those two if that happens. I would, and I think SDSU would, win that, but. And that's not a fandom thing. I do believe that. I truly believe if SDSU gets to Tuesday night, they go dancing. But I think from an entertaining standpoint, that'd be great. I'd see that.
It's been two. That matchup has been two close finals too. I think Omaha missed a buzzer beater and SDSU won in overtime. So it's not like that wouldn't be a tough matchup either.
Right.
It's been two tough games, and I think. Kind of similarly, for different reason or different team though, SDSU versus UND. I think if UND makes it there, that means their offense showed up for 2 days already. Granted they'd have to play 3 days in a row, so who knows what the fatigue factor looks like in that case. And I could be wrong here, but is SDSU still the only team that has won the tournament playing 3 days in a row, going back to TJ's first year as the coach?
That I'm not sure.
I know they won it that year, but I don't know if anybody else has won it playing 3 days in a row. But I think UND SDSU, just from an offensive standpoint, kind of like Tim was saying, I think that that game could really light up the scoreboard. So that's probably entertainment wise. I think that, or even if the two North Dakota schools would go head to head, that'd be good. Or if you really want to make SDSU fans nervous, put St. Thomas in there against North Dakota, and.
Yeah.
I think that would be if SDSU wasn't going to make it, obviously would want St. Thomas in it. But that'd be a really interesting environment to see what happens if SDSU fans still show up cheering for St. Thomas and it just becomes a huge Tommy's crowd, or if SDSU fans just stay home and watch. I'm not really sure, but I think there's obviously some good storylines there. But I think SDSU UND would be a really fun matchup in the finals.
Yeah. It's funny that you changed my mind, Jacob. And I'm going to ask one more question that I just thought of, and then we will wrap up. I know I've kept you guys longer than I thought we would. But as you said that, my favorite matchup would be SDSU UND. I think those are the two best teams overall. On their best, they're the two best teams in the league at their best. Kansas City, yes, deserved every bit of being two, and consistency wise, they're more consistent than UND, but just at their best, those are the two best teams in the league. And the ability of Sotne and Amara a little bit to step out, and those big guards for Trace and BJ and Tyree are all 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Like, they're big guards that can cut. It'd be fascinating to watch if the first half we saw the last game against UND SDSU could be more of an entire game. That would be. I think Tim, you said if I do not think SDSU will make it to Tuesday. I think it's a weird climb for them. I don't know exactly where it happens, but I think something happens in that weird climb, and it could be even as weird as Oral Roberts. I'm not guessing that, but that climb, if it's Oral Roberts, then NDSU or St. Thomas, it's just a weird climb for them. But if they get to Tuesday, they're winning it. That I believe to be true. So off the radar guy, if there was an off the radar guy to win MVP of the tournament, who do you pick?
I would probably go, if I had coming from a sneaky team to win it and surprise.
Not even a sneaky team necessarily, a sneaky player, just whatever. It could be anything.
True. Good point. I would say, if SDSU wins, I could see Charlie easily being MVP.
Yep.
If it's a non-SDSU team, I could see, if St. Thomas wins it, Raheem Anthony being MVP, just because he does so much that doesn't necessarily get noticed, because they do play at a slower pace, so slower possessions, the stats aren't jump out at you, but he shoots 50% from three. He has this killer drive, jump stop, pump fake that gets everybody in trouble, goes to the free throw line a bunch, and he can defend almost every position. So I think those would be my two sneaky MVP picks.
Gotcha.
No, that's my exact answer for, if SDSU was to win, it would be Charlie, would be the sneaky guy. But is it sneaky? I guess if everyone's thinking it. But he gets so many big rebounds. He just seems to hit clutch threes when they need it. There's been games where the offense is slow and he hits the first like 2 or 3 buckets. He gets really streaky offensively where he won't do anything for 20 minutes and then you look at the scoreboard and he's got 12 points or something. He'll have 2 or 3 steals. To make it to Tuesday, kind of predicting a big, steal at some point that leads to a layup in an and one kind of situation that gets the SDSU crowd behind it. A guy like Luke Apple, we've really seen him kind of come on strong late. Wouldn't surprise me if he ended up averaging like 17 points a game in the tournament because there really isn't a whole lot of solid 4 or 5 combos in the conference. So if they really tried to force him the ball offensively, I could see him just racking up the points. But if it wasn't SDSU, I did like the Anthony bet there, or pick there, because, if St. Thomas was going to, sneak on and win it, I think they need to have somebody that's a true X factor. And I think Anthony's, gives issues to a lot of teams with his playmaking ability, his athleticism, just the things he can kind of do on and off the ball defensively. So I do like that pick as kind of another sneaky one. I guess there's really not Brown or Omat wouldn't be a sneaky MVP pick on the other half. I guess, and even Fiddler, if they'd make it, that's not, sneaky there. So that would kind of be the couple names I'd throw out there.
Yeah. I'm glad you said, I was going to say Luke Apple. I thought it was going to be a surprise. Cause Charlie, I think, but Luke Apple, like we know the main big is going to take Kyle.
Yep.
And then he has so many teams where he's against, and the matchup is so tough for the other team because if you got the big, like NDSU, if Morgan's got Kyle, like then you've got, if Fedderson, that fine player, but like then now you've got somebody else on Apple. And I will give you a North Dakota guy, Trayson, just goes crazy. Would it be shocking to hear Trayson go, if they really made a run, Trayson scores 20, 24, 26, just getting open looks. And then way off the radar, if Kansas City got the right matchups and made it all the way, Mukeba can do some weird things. But I see him more settling into what we saw from Elijah Lofile a few years ago, where all of a sudden he just came on strong, but it wasn't like MVP worthy because he didn't get the ball enough. But I could see that's a name where people are going, I didn't even know who this guy was. And now who the heck's that guy that got 18 points and 12 rebounds?
Yeah. I just think on that bottom half, for those teams to win, their stars have to lead the way. I don't think they have secondary players. UND, I could see UND having a secondary guy like a Tyree or something. But I think for one of those bottom half teams to win it, it's because their star led the way.
Yeah, and Trayson is capable of 27. It just isn't back-to-back.
But he needs someone to give him the ball. That's
he
where
does.
that's where his thing is he needs.
He does have one of the best in the league at doing that, though.
What's that?
Tyree's got one of the best in the league at doing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, he can't do it that himself. That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, that was a fun tournament preview. We really didn't lose many people, so we must not have been horrible. Nice. And it grew throughout the thing. So thank you to everyone for listening. And hopefully this is something I wanted to try out at the end of the year this year, and then something we maybe could do more during the year next year if it seemed to be of interest to people, and it seemed to be. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining, gentlemen. And everybody enjoy the tournament.
All right. See you guys in a bit.
Yep.
Sir.